You know that feeling. You and your partner, maybe, you're working your tails off super hard.
Mm-hmm.
The paychecks land. And for just like a split second, you think, okay, phew, we're good.
Yeah, that brief moment of relief.
Exactly. But then you actually look at the balance after the bills start hitting, and it's just poof.
Gone. Vanished.
Right. And you're not out there buying yachts. It's just the constant drumbeat of family life, isn't it? Kids, groceries, keeping the car actually running, those bills that just never stop.
They keep coming.
And despite pouring all this energy in, you feel like you're just, treading water, never really getting ahead.
That picture you're painting, it's incredibly common. We hear it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's especially rough for hardworking parents who are already juggling, well, everything.
Totally.
They're putting everything into providing, maybe working extra jobs, sacrificing time with family, their own well-being. And that financial stress, the constant worry, it's exhausting. It takes a huge emotional toll.
Absolutely. And look, if that sounds familiar, if that resonates, here's something really important. This probably isn't about you not earning enough money. Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely not about like beating yourself up over buying a coffee. You might not even need another super strict budget.
Right. That's often the go-to advice, isn't it? Just budget harder.
Yeah. But what if? What if you actually need a totally different way of thinking about how your money moves?
That's a really key insight. Because the common thinking, the usual advice, it often points to income. If I could just make a bit more.
Oh, yeah. The if-only trap.
Exactly. And look, more income can help, obviously. But without a clear strategy, that extra money can just disappear. Surprisingly fast, actually.
Keep water through your hands?
Pretty much. Expenses have this funny way of rising to meet income, don't they?
Yeah.
And the debts, well, they often just stick around, still draining you. That underlying stress, it doesn't magically go away with a bigger paycheck.
Okay, so we're not here today to tell you to cut out everything fun. That's not the point.
No.
Our mission really, with this deep dive, is to dig into why. Why do so many dedicated people working so hard find themselves stuck in this cycle? Working hard, but the financial progress just isn't there.
Right. We want to explore a different angle, something beyond just the usual budgeting rules.
So let's talk about budgeting, traditional budgeting, because it's the first thing everyone recommends, right?
Yeah, usually is, yeah.
But why doesn't it always work? Especially for busy families already feeling stretched thin.
Well, I think putting expenses into categories can give you some awareness, like, okay, this is where the money went.
Sure, basic tracking.
Basic tracking.
Yeah.
But it often misses some really critical pieces of the puzzle. Big pieces.
Like what? What does it miss?
Okay, well, first, think about the sheer logistics, the timing. Your income probably comes in, twice a month? Once a month.
Pretty predictable, yeah.
But your bills, the mortgage or rent, the car payment, utilities, maybe childcare, those have their own due dates, all scattered through the month.
Oh, yeah, they don't line up nicely at all.
Not even close. And that mismatch, just the timing difference between money coming in and money needing to go out, that alone creates this constant pressure. You're always anticipating, right? Or worse, you get hit with late fees or just the stress of hoping you make it to the next payday.
Right, that paycheck to paycheck anxiety, even if the total income looks okay on paper.
Precisely. And then let's talk debt, specifically minimum payments.
The minimum trap.
You make them, you feel like you're doing the right thing, keeping accounts current. But the reality, especially with high interest stuff like credit cards, so much of that payment just gets eaten by interest.
So you're paying, but the actual debt number barely budges.
Exactly. It can keep people trapped for years, even when they're being really diligent.
Yeah.
Feels like running on a hamster wheel. And often they they might not know strategies to actually attack the principal effectively. That knowledge gap is real.
Okay, timing mismatch, minimum payments. What else?
Well, what about all those little things, the stuff that pops up?
Life stuff.
Yeah, life stuff. The kid needs money for a field trip, the tire gets a slow leak, it's someone's birthday.
Things you can't easily budget for months in advance.
Right. They're not like huge, extravagant things, but they don't fit neatly into those rigid budget boxes, and they could totally throw your plan off track for the week or the month.
And it's not about being undisciplined, is it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's just the typical budgeting method isn't really built for the messy reality of life. These little money leaks, as people call them, they could feel relentless when you're already tight.
Yeah, death by 1,000 cuts almost.
Sort of.
Yeah.
And here's another big gap in a lot of standard budgeting advice. It often doesn't focus enough on how interest, like on credit cards or loans, adds up daily.
Daily. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't really guide you on how to strategically use your income, like the timing of your payments, to fight back against that daily interest and pay debt down faster, but safely. Budgeting often looks backwards. Where did it go?
Instead of looking forward, how can I make it work smarter?
Exactly. How can you proactively manage the flow to minimize interest and speed things up? That's often missing.
Okay, so if the traditional budget isn't always the magic bullet, especially for folks feeling this constant squeeze, what's the alternative? You mentioned strategic cash flow. What does that actually mean for someone feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, so at its heart, it's really about shifting your focus,
Hmm.
moving away from just looking at static categories, income here, expenses there, and instead really understanding and actively managing the movement of your money, the flow.
The flow, like a river, almost.
Kind of, yeah. It's about knowing when your money arrives, but just as importantly, when all your different bills and debts need to be paid.
The due dates.
The exact due days. And the goal is to try and line those things up as smartly as possible, instead of just reacting whenever a payday hits or a bill screams for attention.
Okay, that makes sense conceptually, but how? The source material we looked at mentioned something. Using a personal line of credit. Strategically. Now, wait a second. For someone already worried about debt, hearing use more credit might sound a bit alarming.
Totally understand that reaction. And it's crucial to emphasize this isn't about just racking up more debt without a solid plan. That's not it at all.
Okay, so what is it about?
The idea, potentially,
Mm.
is using a low-interest personal line of credit, almost like a short-term bridge, a timing tool.
A timing tool, how?
Okay, imagine you have several big bills due, say a week before your main paycheck hits. Instead of stressing or paying late, you could theoretically use the line of credit to pay those specific bills on their due date.
Okay.
And then, the moment your paycheck lands, you immediately pay off that amount on a line of credit.
So you're basically shifting the payment date using the LOC.
Exactly. You're using it to bridge that timing gap. The potential benefit, if the line of credit has a significantly lower interest rate than, say, your credit cards, is that you might minimize the number of days those other debts are accruing their higher daily interest. You're optimizing the timing of outflows based on your inflows.
So it's less about, I need to slash my spending by 50%, and more about being really smart and intentional about when money moves.
That's a huge part of it, yes. The source really highlights that you can make real, meaningful progress, not just by making painful cuts which are hard to stick with long term, especially for busy parents.
Yeah, unsustainable sometimes.
Right, but also by using smarter strategies to manage the flow of the money you already have. It's about working with your financial reality, not just fighting against it.
Okay. Now, this leads into something else mentioned in the source, this tool called Crush Debt Coach. And again, we're not here to, sell anything.
No, definitely not.
But the way it's described seems to illustrate this shift in thinking really well. From just budgeting to actively managing cash flow based on your actual life.
Precisely. The concept behind it, as it's presented, is that it tries to give you a personalized plan, a roadmap.
Personalize how?
By apparently taking your specific income amounts, your exact bill due dates, your specific debt interest rates, all of it, and using that to build a tailored plan for paying things down.
So moving beyond just generic advice, like pay off the highest interest card first, which is good, but maybe doesn't account for cash flow timing.
Exactly. It's described as trying to look at your whole unique financial picture and create a plan that fits that, rather than a one-size-fits-all rule.
Almost like having a financial GPS, maybe, that sees when the money is coming in. There's exactly when it needs to go out for each specific thing.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
And then figures out the most efficient route to pay things off. And the benefit they talk about is getting rid of that horrible guesswork, that feeling of, I'm working so hard, I'm paying things, but am I actually making progress? Is this even working?
That uncertainty is a killer.
Especially for parents juggling jobs, kids, everything. Just knowing your efforts are actually moving the needle, that clarity could be huge for reducing stress.
Absolutely. And the source mentions, that this kind of approach isn't just some abstract idea. It's apparently based on methods used with one-on-one clients, just made more accessible.
So empowering people with strategy they can use themselves on their own time.
That seems to be the idea. Which kind of brings us back to that really powerful core message from the source material.
Yeah. Which one?
You're not broke. You're buried under broken systems.
Yeah.
That hits home, doesn't it?
It really does. I think for so many parents who are doing absolutely everything they can think of, working incredibly hard, and still feeling like they're falling behind, that statement can feel incredibly validating.
Like, it's not just me. I'm not failing.
Exactly. It acknowledges those gut-wrenching feelings, the thoughts like, we make good money between us, why can't we ever seem to breathe?
Or I am just so tired of worrying about money every single week, leaving no time for family, for yourself.
Mm-hmm. That constant mental load and that dawning realization, okay, the budgets I've tried, they aren't really helping. Something fundamental is missing here. That's often the first step towards looking for a different approach.
And the source really drives home that the answer isn't always just more hustle, you
Yeah.
know?
More grind. Yeah, just work harder. Add more hours to days that are already overflowing, sacrificing even more family time or sleep. Maybe that's not the only solution.
Maybe it's about finding a financial strategy that actually fits the real rhythm of your life, your income patterns, your expense timings. Instead of trying to cram your complex reality into a simple, generic budgeting box that doesn't quite fit.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what's the main takeaway here? Especially for those parents listening who are feeling that constant financial strain, trying to provide, feeling buried.
I think the biggest thing, the most crucial point from this deep dive is realizing that the timing and the flow of your money, these are often way more important factors in getting control and feeling stable than just meticulously tracking every single dollar you
Like
spend.
stuff that traditional budgeting often just glosses over.
It really does. It overlooks these dynamic elements, and that leaves a lot of people feeling stuck, feeling like they must be missing something obvious, even when they're trying their best.
So maybe the final thought for you listening is this. Take a step back. Ask yourself honestly, are the struggles you're facing really just about not having enough income? Or could it be maybe more about a fundamental misalignment, a clash between when your money comes in and when your life requires it to go out?
Yeah. Is the system you're using working for you, or are you constantly fighting against it?
Maybe it's time to explore strategies that go beyond just putting spending into boxes. Strategies that look at the whole picture, the movement, the flow. Because as our source puts it, and I love this, you're not behind. You're just one smart shift away from momentum.